I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel.
In the gleaming halls of the Terran Diplomatic Corps' Quantum Data Center, Olivia Reeves was doing what she did best, finding patterns in chaos. Her fingers danced across holographic displays as she sifted through mountains of interstellar trade data, looking for anomalies that might affect Earth's position in the galactic economy. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but it suited her perfectly. At least, it did until the day she accidentally changed the course of galactic history. The message that started it all popped up on her screen at 3:47 p.m. Earth Standard Time, a routine request to verify some numbers in the latest trade agreement with the Krylonian Empire. The Krylonians, with their crystalline bodies and reputation for Byzantine bureaucracy, had dominated galactic politics for millennia through their mastery of complex treaties and trade agreements. Olivia took a sip of her now-cold coffee and opened the document. As she scrolled through the dense text, something caught her eye. A pattern in the numbers, subtle but distinct, like a whisper in a crowded room. She pulled up additional treaties from the archives, and the pattern grew clearer. Every agreement, every treaty, every trade deal contained the same mathematical quirk. "That's odd," she mumbled, reaching for her tablet to make some calculations. The numbers shouldn't have aligned so perfectly across centuries of documentation. It was almost as if. Her eyes widened. Oh no. Without thinking about protocol or chain of command, Olivia did something that would later be described as either incredibly brave or monumentally foolish. She sent her findings directly to Ambassador Jensen, Earth's representative at the ongoing Galactic Trade Summit. The summit was being held in the Krylonian capital, a city of crystal spires and geometric perfection that reflected the Empire's obsession with order. Ambassador Jensen was in the middle of a session when Olivia's message arrived, discussing the latest trade agreement with High Chancellor Vexthor, the Krylonians' chief negotiator. Jensen's face paled as he read Olivia's analysis. He looked up at Vexthor, whose crystalline form was refracting light in patterns that suggested supreme confidence. "High Chancellor," Jensen said slowly, "I believe we need to discuss these trade ratios." Vexthor's surface rippled with amusement. "The ratios are perfectly standard, Ambassador. They have been used in thousands of treaties across the galaxy." "Yes," Jensen replied, pulling up Olivia's data. "That's exactly the problem. According to our analysis, these ratios create a mathematical cascade that always results in a 3% advantage for the Empire, hidden behind 17 layers of economic algorithms." The chamber went silent. Vexthor's crystalline body suddenly became very still, light no longer dancing across its facets. Other Krylonian officials began to emit high-pitched tones that the universal translators couldn't interpret. Back on Earth, Olivia was about to discover that her life was about to change dramatically. Her computer screen lit up with an incoming priority transmission from the summit. She expected a reprimand for breaking protocol. Instead, she found herself looking at Ambassador Jensen's face, tight with barely contained excitement. "A mess. Reeves," he said, "how quickly can you get to New Shanghai Spaceport? There's a diplomatic shuttle waiting to bring you to the summit." Olivia blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The Krylonians are demanding to meet the person who discovered the pattern. They've suspended all negotiations until they can verify your findings in person." "But I'm just a data analyst," Olivia protested. "I'm not qualified for a mess." "Reeves," Jensen interrupted, "you've just discovered a mathematical proof that the Krylonian Empire has been manipulating galactic trade for over 2,000 years. I think we're well past qualifications at this point." 24 hours later, Olivia found herself aboard a diplomatic shuttle, watching Earth shrink behind her as she tried to process how analyzing trade data had led to her first trip off-planet. The shuttle's other occupant, a junior diplomat named Marcus Wong, was briefing her on protocol. "Whatever you do," he was saying, "don't mention the word fraud or anything similar. The Krylonians consider themselves masters of legitimate complexity. They don't cheat, they just create systems so intricate that no one else can understand them. Olivia nodded absently, her mind still running through the numbers. Has anyone ever actually analyzed their treaties before? I mean, really analyzed them? Marcus laughed. Are you kidding? Most species can barely understand them, let alone analyze them. The Krylonians have teams of specialists who spend decades crafting these agreements. They're considered works of art in their culture. Works of art shouldn't have hidden variables that always benefit the artist, Olivia muttered. As the shuttle approached the Krylonian capital, its crystal spires gleaming in the light of 3 suns, Olivia felt a mix of anticipation and dread. She had spent her career finding patterns in data, making sense of complexity. But she had never imagined that this skill would land her in the middle of a galactic diplomatic crisis. The shuttle docked at a crystalline platform that seemed to float in midair. A delegation of Krylonian officials waited, their bodies refracting light in patterns that the Universal Translator identified as extreme concern. At their head stood High Chancellor Vexthor, his crystalline form now displaying colors that suggested barely contained panic. As Olivia stepped onto the platform, she realized that every Krylonian was staring at her with their geometric sensor arrays. She clutched her tablet, containing the analysis that had brought her here, like a shield. Welcome to Krylonia Prime, Vexthor said, his translated voice carefully neutral. We are eager to discuss your mathematical observations. Olivia took a deep breath. She had come too far to be intimidated now. Thank you, High Chancellor. I have some questions about your algorithmic implementation of compound interest across multiple trade sectors. A sound like tinkling glass swept through the delegation. Vexthor's surface briefly displayed a pattern that the translator didn't even try to interpret. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should continue this discussion somewhere more private. As Olivia followed the delegation into the Crystal City, she couldn't help but think that this was either the beginning of something momentous or the biggest mistake of her career. Either way, she had a feeling the galaxy was about to change. The private meeting chamber within the Krylonian diplomatic spire was designed to overwhelm visitors. Its walls shifted in crystalline patterns that created dizzying optical illusions, while the floor seemed to hover over an endless abyss. But Olivia Reeves, armed with her tablet and an unwavering focus on data, barely noticed the architectural intimidation tactics. High Chancellor Vexthor had assembled what the translator described as a Council of Supreme Economic Architects, 12 of the Empire's most brilliant treaty designers. Their crystalline forms were arranged in a perfect geometric pattern around a floating platform where Olivia's findings were being displayed. As you can see here, Olivia explained, pointing to a particularly complex set of equations, the variable interest rates in Section 47B create a cascading effect that interfaces with the trade quotas in Section 23D. When you factor in the temporal adjustment clauses. She paused, noticing that several of the Krylonian officials were emanating patterns that the translator labeled as extreme distress. One of the economic architects, introduced as Grand Theorist Zwextal, moved forward. Impossible, he declared, though his crystalline surface was flickering with what appeared to be doubt. Our systems are perfect in their complexity. No organic mind could dash. Actually, Olivia interrupted, pulling up another dataset, that's part of the problem. Your systems aren't complex enough. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of crystalline tones. High Chancellor Vexthor's form briefly lost its coherent structure, momentarily becoming a confused mass of geometric shapes before reforming. Explain, he demanded. Olivia took a deep breath. True complexity isn't about making things harder to understand. It's about the interaction of multiple simple systems creating unexpected outcomes. Your treaties. She hesitated, then decided to be blunt, they're just complicated. There's a difference. In the observation chamber above, Ambassador Jensen watched with a mixture of horror and admiration as Olivia systematically dismantled centuries of Krylonian economic theory. Next to him, Marcus Wong was frantically taking notes. "She's either going to start a war or revolutionize galactic trade," he whispered. Back in the chamber, Olivia was warming to her subject. "Look at this pattern here," she said, highlighting a section of the trade agreement. "You've created 17 layers of obfuscation, but they all follow the same basic algorithm. Once you understand the pattern, you can predict exactly how any treaty will benefit the Empire." Grand Theorist Zwextal's surface was now displaying colors that the translator simply labeled as unspecified currency. Apparently, there was no human equivalent for the emotion he was experiencing. But the complexity is our art. Our culture. Our way of life. Complexity can be beautiful, Olivia agreed, surprising the Krylonians. But it should emerge naturally from simple, fair rules. "Here, let me show you something." She pulled up a visualization of Earth's weather patterns, a classic example of chaos theory. The Krylonians watched, transfixed, as simple atmospheric interactions created intricate, ever-changing patterns. "This is true complexity," Olivia explained. "You can't predict exactly what will happen, but you can understand the basic principles at work." High Chancellor Vexthor moved closer to the display, his crystalline form refracting light in new patterns. "You are suggesting we simplify our treaties?" "I'm suggesting you make them fair," Olivia corrected. "Complexity will emerge on its own from honest interactions between trading partners." The chamber fell silent. Then, from somewhere in the back, a young Krylonian official spoke up. "But how will we maintain our economic advantage?" Olivia smiled. "That's the interesting part. When trade is genuinely fair, everyone finds new ways to create value. Look at Earth's history. She was interrupted by an urgent communication. The chamber's main display suddenly filled with the faces of various alien species, representatives from dozens of worlds that had treaties with the Krylonian Empire. Word of Olivia's analysis had spread. "We demand a review of all existing agreements," announced a tentacled being that the translator identified as the chief executor of the Meridian Collective. "The Arcturian Confederation requires immediate clarification of our mining rights," declared another. High Chancellor Vexthor's form began to emit a high-pitched resonance that made the chamber's crystals vibrate. "This is unprecedented. We cannot simply dash." "Actually," Olivia interjected, pulling up another dataset, "I've already drafted a framework for reviewing and simplifying existing treaties. It would take about 6 standard months to implement, and it could be done without disrupting current trade flows." The chamber erupted again, but this time the chaos had a different quality. Some of the younger Krylonian officials were displaying patterns that suggested excitement rather than panic. Grand Theorist Zwextal was studying Olivia's weather pattern visualization with intense interest. In the observation chamber, Ambassador Jensen turned to Marcus. "Contact Earth immediately. Tell them we need a full diplomatic team here within 48 hours. And get me everything we have on chaos theory and emergent systems." Marcus nodded, then hesitated. "Sir, should we be concerned that Ms. Reeves just offered to reorganize the entire galactic economy?" Jensen watched as Olivia calmly explained the basics of dynamic systems to a group of increasingly fascinated Krylonian officials. "No," he said finally. "I think we should be more concerned about what she'll do next." High Chancellor Vexthor, meanwhile, had moved to a quiet corner of the chamber and opened a secure channel to the Krylonian Emperor. "Your crystalline majesty," he said, his form vibrating with stress, "I regret to inform you that the human has not only understood our systems, she has transcended them." The Emperor's response was immediate and unprecedented: "Keep her there. Learn everything she knows. The age of manufactured complexity is over. We must adapt or shatter." As the day drew to a close, Olivia sat in her assigned quarters, reviewing her notes and wondering how a routine data analysis had led to this moment. Her tablet displayed messages from Earth. Apparently, she was now trending on several social media platforms as the woman who broke the empire. She sighed and pulled up the weather pattern simulation again, watching as virtual air currents created endless, beautiful variations. Perhaps this was what galactic trade could become, a dance of genuine complexity, emerging from honest cooperation. A message appeared on her screen. Tomorrow's meetings would include representatives from 27 species, all eager to learn about this new approach to interstellar economics. Olivia smiled. The real complexity was just beginning. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Krylonian capital had never hosted such a diverse gathering. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations filled the crystalline chamber, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. At the center of it all, standing before a holographic display that filled the air with swirling data streams, was Olivia Reeves, the human who had accidentally sparked a diplomatic revolution. The fundamental problem, she explained, gesturing to a particularly complex treaty section, isn't just the hidden advantages. The Meridian Collective's representative, Ambassador ZYLPH, extended several tentacles in what the translator indicated was a gesture of skepticism. The Krylonian Empire has dominated galactic trade for millennia. Are you suggesting their entire economic model is flawed? Not flawed, Olivia corrected, bringing up a new visualization. Just artificially limited. Look at this simulation of Earth's historical trade patterns. The holographic display shifted, showing the evolution of human commerce from ancient trade routes to modern global economics. Points of light represented trade centers, with flowing lines of different colors showing the movement of various resources. As the simulation progressed, the patterns grew increasingly complex but remained harmonious. Notice how new connections create new opportunities, Olivia continued. When trade is genuinely fair, it drives innovation. People find new ways to create value because they're not wasting energy trying to decode hidden clauses or protect themselves from mathematical tricks. High Chancellor Vexthor, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly moved forward. His crystalline form was displaying patterns that the translator struggled to interpret. You speak of innovation, he said, but our empire was built on the art of complexity. What you propose would destroy centuries of tradition. Olivia turned to face him directly. Chancellor, with respect, your empire's greatest achievement wasn't creating complexity, it was maintaining stability. You created a system that prevented interstellar wars over resources. That's incredible. But now it's time for that system to evolve. In the observation gallery above, Ambassador Jensen watched with a mixture of pride and nervousness as Olivia continued her presentation. Next to him, Marcus Wong was coordinating with Earth's rapidly assembled team of economic experts, who were frantically trying to keep up with the implications of what was unfolding. Sir, Marcus whispered, the Arcturian Confederation is requesting immediate implementation of Ms. Reeves' transparency protocols in their sector. The Meridian Collective is offering to open their quantum computing networks to help process the transition. This is spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Jensen nodded slowly. History doesn't always warn you when it's about to happen, Marcus. Sometimes it just walks into a room and starts explaining data analysis. Back on the main floor, Olivia was addressing concerns from the Helix Alliance, a coalition of synthetic intelligence civilizations. Their representative, a shimmering field of quantum particles that called itself Interface, had raised questions about the psychological impact of transparent trade. Actually, Olivia said, pulling up another dataset, psychological factors are key to this whole approach. When trading partners trust each other, they're more willing to take calculated risks, to innovate, to invest in long-term relationships. Look at these patterns from Earth's digital marketplaces. As she spoke, something unprecedented was happening among the Krylonian delegation. The younger officials, led by a rising star named Lwxtel, were displaying color patterns that indicated growing excitement rather than dismay. They had begun overlaying their own analysis algorithms onto Olivia's models, finding new applications and possibilities. "High Chancellor," Lwxtel announced suddenly, his form blazing with inspiration, "we've been analyzing Ms. Reeves' principles using our quantum matrices. The potential for emergent complexity in a transparent system it's beyond anything our traditional models could achieve." The chamber erupted in a cascade of discussions, debates, and rapid-fire calculations. Species that had been suspicious of each other for centuries were suddenly sharing data, comparing notes, and exploring possibilities. The Helix Alliance offered their quantum processing power to help model transition scenarios. The Meridian Collective began drafting protocols for a new kind of interstellar exchange. In the midst of this chaos, High Chancellor Vexthor approached Olivia privately. His crystalline surface had taken on a subdued, almost contemplative pattern. "You must understand," he said quietly, "what you've started here, it cannot be undone. The galaxy will never be the same." Olivia nodded, watching as representatives from ancient rival species enthusiastically shared ideas. "That's the thing about truth, Chancellor. Once it's out there, people tend to prefer it to even the most elegant deceptions." The Chancellor's form shifted in what might have been a sigh. "The Emperor has requested your presence. Not as a negotiator or analyst, but as a teacher. He believes our next generation of diplomats must understand your principles if we are to remain relevant in this new galaxy you've created." Before Olivia could respond, an urgent message flashed across the chamber's main display. More species were requesting to join the assembly. The Quantum Concordat, the Silicon Collective, even the notoriously isolationist cloud minds of the Orion Spur, all wanted to be part of what was quickly being called the Transparency Revolution. Ambassador Jensen made his way down to the main floor, reaching Olivia just as she finished answering a rapid-fire series of questions from various delegates. "I hope you realize," he said with a slight smile, "that you've just made my job both impossible and unnecessary at the same time." Olivia looked around the chamber, at the swirling holograms of trade data, at the diverse species engaging in eager discussion, at the young Krylonian officials already adapting their traditional models to incorporate her principles. "Actually," she said, "I think I just made everyone's job more interesting." As the day's session drew to a close, Olivia received a message from Earth. The major economic councils were requesting her insights on applying her galactic transparency principles to Earth's markets. She couldn't help but laugh. She had traveled across the stars to teach aliens about honest trade, only to have her own species ask for the same lessons. The galaxy was changing, one transparent transaction at a time, and not even the crystal spires of the Krylonian Empire could remain unchanging in the face of this new dawn. 2 months after the historic assembly, Olivia found herself standing in the most unlikely of places, the central archive of the Krylonian Empire. The vast chamber, stretching kilometers in every direction, housed the accumulated knowledge of millennia of galactic trade. Crystalline data cores pulsed with stored information, their surfaces reflecting the soft ambient light in hypnotic patterns. "This is where it all began," said Lwxtel, who had become her unofficial guide to Krylonian culture. His crystalline form shimmered with what the translator now recognized as intellectual excitement. "Every treaty, every trade agreement, every economic algorithm our species ever created, all stored here." Olivia ran her hand over one of the data cores, feeling its subtle vibration. "And now you're really going to do it? You're going to make it all public?" "The Emperor's decree was clear," Lwxtel responded, his surface displaying patterns of pride mixed with nervous anticipation. "The archive will be open to all member species of the new Galactic Trade Cooperative. Complete transparency, just as you advocated." The decision had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Krylonian Empire, legendary for its secretive economic practices, was not just adopting transparency, it was throwing open the doors to its most closely guarded knowledge vault. Ambassador ZYLPH is arriving tomorrow with the Meridian Collective's data mining team, LWXTEL continued. The Helix Alliance has already offered their quantum processors to help cross-reference everything with their own historical records. Even the cloud mines are contributing their atmospheric databases. Olivia nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. When different systems interact freely, new patterns emerge. She gestured at the vast archive. This is going to change everything we thought we knew about galactic economics. A soft chime interrupted them, a priority message from Earth. Olivia's tablet displayed a live feed from the United Nations Economic Council. Dr. Thomas Rivera, Earth's leading expert on interstellar commerce, looked both excited and concerned. Ms. Reeves, he began without preamble, we're detecting unusual activity in the quantum markets. Species that have never traded before are establishing direct connections. The Arcturian Confederation just opened their biotech research to the Silicon Collective. The cloud mines are sharing atmospheric manipulation techniques with the Meridian Collective. The entire galactic economy is evolving. That's what happens when you remove artificial barriers, Olivia replied, watching as new trade routes appeared on the global visualization. Knowledge wants to flow naturally, like water finding its own path. But the speed of change. Dr. Rivera hesitated. Some of our economists are concerned about stability. LWXTEL moved into view of the transmission, his form displaying what Olivia had learned to recognize as amusement. Your economists are thinking in linear terms, Dr. Rivera. Watch this. He interfaced with a nearby data core, pulling up a real-time map of galactic trade flows. The display filled the air around them with rivers of light, resources, information, and technology flowing between thousands of worlds. But unlike the rigid, controlled patterns of the old system, these flows were dynamic, adapting and shifting like the weather patterns Olivia had shown in her first presentation. Beautiful, isn't it? LWXTEL said softly. We spent millennia trying to control complexity, never realizing that true stability comes from letting it find its own balance. Dr. Rivera leaned forward, his eyes wide. Those patterns, they're self-organizing. The system is actually becoming more stable as it becomes more complex. Exactly, Olivia confirmed. When everyone has access to the same information, they make better decisions. The market corrects itself naturally, without need for artificial controls. The conversation was interrupted by another chime, this one from the Helix Alliance. Interface, their quantum field representative, materialized as a hologram in the archive. We have completed our initial analysis of the Krylonian historical data, Interface announced, its particle field shifting in excitement. The patterns we're discovering, they confirm theories our civilizations have debated for centuries. The principles of fair exchange aren't just economic, they're fundamental to the nature of reality itself. Olivia couldn't help but smile. The universe prefers honesty, she said. Who knew? Over the next few hours, more reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Quantum Concordat reported unprecedented advances in their understanding of trade dynamics. The Silicon Collective announced breakthroughs in predicting market behavior. Even the notoriously pessimistic cloud mines admitted that the new system was producing unexpectedly optimal outcomes. But it was a message from High Chancellor Vexthor that truly captured the magnitude of the change. His form, displayed in the archive's central hologram, showed colors that the translator identified as profound revelation. The Emperor has made a decision, he announced. The position of High Chancellor will be abolished. In its place, we are establishing the Council of Emergent Commerce, a collaborative body representing all trading species. Ms. Reeves, we request that you assist in its formation. Olivia blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm just Just the person who showed us that true power comes from sharing knowledge, not hoarding it, LWXTEL interrupted. The galaxy needs your perspective, Olivia. We've spent too long thinking in crystals when we should have been thinking in waves. As if to emphasize his point, a new visualization appeared in the archive, a real-time display of knowledge sharing across the galaxy. Points of light representing different species pulsed and connected, forming patterns reminiscent of neural networks. The galaxy wasn't just trading goods anymore, it was becoming a vast, interconnected web of shared wisdom. Dr. Rivera, still watching from Earth, shook his head in amazement. When you first discovered that pattern in the Krylonian treaties, did you ever imagine it would lead to this? Olivia watched as another wave of connections bloomed across the galactic map. Actually, she said, I think we're still just beginning to understand where it's leading. The really interesting patterns, they're still emerging. And in the depths of the crystal archive, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of ages and the promise of ages yet to come, Olivia Reeves, the data analyst who had changed the galaxy, began planning for a future where complexity served truth, not power. 1 year after the opening of the Krylonian archive, the galaxy had transformed in ways that even Olivia's data models hadn't predicted. The newly constructed Hall of Emergent Commerce floated in neutral space, its crystalline organic hybrid architecture symbolizing the merger of Krylonian precision with the natural flow patterns Olivia had championed. Inside the Grand Chamber, representatives from over 100 species gathered for the first anniversary of what historians were now calling the Transparency Revolution. The walls displayed real-time visualizations of galactic trade flows, a constant reminder of how far they'd come from the days of hidden algorithms and bureaucratic mazes. Olivia stood at the observation deck, watching as a Silicon Collective ship docked alongside a Meridian transport vessel. Just a year ago, these species had barely acknowledged each other's existence. Now they were primary trading partners in an initiative to develop new forms of quantum computing. Still finding patterns? A familiar crystalline voice asked. Olivia turned to see Elwextel, his form displaying the confident patterns of a rising diplomatic star. As the youngest member of the Council of Emergent Commerce, he had become a symbol of the Krylonian Empire's transformation. Always, Olivia replied, gesturing to the trade flow displays. Look at this new pattern forming in the Orion Spur. The cloud mines are actually leaving their atmospheric havens to establish direct trade routes. Speaking of patterns, Elwextel said, his surface shimming with what she now recognized as suppressed excitement, the Council has finished analyzing the first year's data. The results, well, perhaps you should see for yourself. The main chamber's holographic system activated, filling the space with a comprehensive display of the galaxy's economic activity. Points of light representing different civilizations pulsed with trade and information exchange, creating patterns that made Olivia's original weather system models look simple by comparison. Interface, the Helix Alliance representative, materialized beside them. The system has exceeded all projected stability parameters, it announced, its quantum field rippling with satisfaction. Voluntary cooperation has produced emergent properties that our most advanced algorithms failed to predict. Ambassador ZYLPH of the Meridian Collective extended their tentacles in a gesture of agreement. Our collective productivity has increased by 300% since the adoption of transparent trading protocols. But more importantly, look at this. The display shifted, showing a new metric that Olivia had helped develop, the Innovation Index. It measured how often different species collaborated to create new technologies or solve shared problems. The graph showed an almost vertical rise over the past year. We're not just trading more efficiently, Olivia explained to the gathered representatives. We're thinking differently. When species trust each other enough to share knowledge freely, they start finding solutions that no one could have discovered alone. High Chancellor Vexthor, in one of his last official acts before the position was permanently retired, moved to the center of the chamber. His crystalline form displayed colors that the translator now recognized as profound satisfaction. 1 year ago, he began, a human data analyst showed us that we had confused complexity with progress. We had built our empire on the art of making simple things complicated. Now, thanks to her insight, we are learning the greater art of letting complexity emerge naturally from cooperation. The chamber's displays shifted again, showing a new visualization that drew gasps from the assembled delegates. It was a real-time map of not just trade and innovation, but cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and artistic fusion between species. This, Olivia said softly, this is what I hoped we'd see. Not just economic patterns, but the emergence of something entirely new, a galactic civilization that's more than the sum of its parts. Dr. Rivera, attending via quantum hologram from Earth, leaned forward in amazement. The implications for human society alone are staggering. Our own markets have evolved more in the past year than in the previous century. Because you stopped trying to control them and started understanding them, Elwextel noted. Just as we stopped trying to control galactic trade and started nurturing it. A soft chime announced the arrival of a new delegation, the first representatives of a newly spacefaring civilization from the galaxy's outer rim. They had specifically requested to join the Galactic Trade Cooperative, having observed how transparency and cooperation were reshaping the cosmic order. As Olivia watched the newcomers enter the chamber, she remembered her first days as a data analyst, searching for patterns in endless streams of numbers. She had never imagined that finding one hidden algorithm would lead to this, a galaxy transforming itself through the power of shared knowledge and genuine cooperation. Interface's quantum field shifted, forming patterns that somehow conveyed both amusement and respect. You humans have a saying, do you not? About truth being stranger than fiction? Olivia nodded, watching as the trade flow displays adapted to include the new civilization's potential contributions. We do. Though I'm starting to think truth is just what happens when you let reality work the way it wants to, instead of trying to force it into the patterns you expect. The chamber's displays continued their endless dance of light and data, showing a galaxy learning to trust itself, to evolve naturally, to find its own balance. Species that had once hidden behind walls of bureaucracy now shared knowledge freely. Civilizations that had competed for resources now collaborated to create new ones. And at the heart of it all was a simple principle that Olivia had discovered in rows of trade data, that truth, like water, finds its own level. All you have to do is remove the barriers and let it flow. As the anniversary session began, with representatives from across the galaxy sharing their experiences and planning for the future, Olivia couldn't help but smile. She had come to space looking for patterns in numbers, but she had found something far more valuable, proof that the most complex systems work best when built on the simplest foundations of truth and trust. The galaxy was still changing, still evolving, still finding new ways to connect and create. And that, Olivia realized, was the most beautiful pattern of all.